My favorite version is rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub, yay God. But I'll do the more traditional one. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. To Te'avon.
Be careful on the wire.
Yep, I see it.
First of all, I'd like to thank the people who worked this morning on preparing the breakfast. So please stand. I know we had a whole bunch of us. Nobody here to... Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No. Can you hear me? Louder. I can't talk any louder. I need assistance. Still can't hear me? I guess I'll hold this. Okay. I'd like the gentleman who helped prepare the breakfast this morning to stand, please. Thank you. Special thanks to Eli for running back for the bagels. They shortchanged us again. Okay, a little administrative work first. Excuse me. People right now who have name tags have that magnetic thing on the back, and I know some of you can't have them attached to your bod because of whatever the reason may be. If you would possibly, anybody who can't wear those magnetic tags, if you just show by raising a hand, and so we'll order. So there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. Half a dozen is good. A reminder, at the back of the room we have books that anybody can take. If you have some you want to replace them with, that's fine, but take as many as you want. We also have a collection of glasses, toiletries, so in the back if you've got them. Also, we have the latest of our awards. At the SJMC, we won 2 bronze awards, and so we continue to do what's necessary. Mike has brought calendars. They're in the back also. Hopefully he's going to get us the little calendars that go in the wallet, but feel free to take them. I also sent out this past week a request for updates to your hobbies and interests and your professions. Again, this is for a database that will be made available in the next month or so that anybody can look at. And the purpose is to have people essentially converse with other people who have similarities and when they need their services. So if you haven't gotten back to me with updates, please do, and I will make sure the database is updated. The web page for showing that should be available within the month. You will be forced to log in order to see information that's only available for people who belong to the South Jersey Men's Club. Parts of the web are available to anybody on the outside, but items such as a database we don't want the outside world to see. So I will send out an email when you can log in. Essentially what happens is you'll get an email saying please log in with this funny looking password, and then you get the opportunity to change it to whatever you want. We as administrators cannot see your password once it's on, but there's nothing that's going to be really, really confidential to worry about.
You want to know about an update on technology?
Yep. David. Approximately a week ago, Dick Knopf, you'll notice, is not here. He had to go into Virtua. He had some problems with, I guess it's his colon, he had a perforated colon or something. I had spoken to him, I think on Wednesday. He was still in the hospital, and I think I've heard an update that he was still in the hospital on Thursday.
I spoke to him yesterday, and he was at breakfast.
He's at breakfast, so he's eating food probably that, so he's probably eating food that he shouldn't be eating.
He might even be here.
Why does he? No. Okay. At the last meeting, I mentioned something about mitzvah cards, that we were going to give an alternative method for people to get access to mitzvah cards to send out. That will be made available next month. Essentially, you can come in and buy as many mitzvah cards as you want. You won't have to call Len Berman to have it sent out, although that method is still available if that's what you wish to do. Minimum $5 for each card, so you can buy 1, 2, 5, as many as you want, and just send them out whenever you want. So that will be available next month. Okay, Ed Stein.
If you haven't paid your dues at today's meeting, if you would send it to Joel, who's our new treasurer. It was in those emails, his address. Phil. I'm sorry, Joel. Phil. It was in the emails that came around with his address. It's $42. If somebody still wants to pay it today, just stick, well, I have the envelopes now, so just give it to me. A few months ago, we decided, if you recall, the janitor who used to set up for us here for years died. And we wanted to do something to honor him with the JCC. And what we've come up with, we want to kind of pair it with the fact that the food bank recently has a real need for more food or more dollars to buy food. And what we would like to do is get some contributions from the members toward the food bank, and the club will match it up to $250. And we'll donate those monies to the food bank in honor of Tom, who was the janitor here who helped set up for years. So if whoever would like to donate today, I have a start here of a check for that from one of our members. Anything, 5, 10, 25. If you want to do cash, we can do cash, or a check. Or if you want to mail a check, go ahead and mail a check. You can mail it to Phil, and just note on it. It should be made out to JFCS, Jewish Family and Children's Services, and just note in the memo line food bank, because otherwise it'll just go into like the general fund. So if you would, that would be great. And we'll let you know at the next meeting what the donation is and so forth. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed?
Yes.
Okay, Mike? Where are you, Mike? There you are. You mentioned you wanted to speak for a few moments?
Good morning, everyone. Operation Maccabee is something we've done for quite a few years, starting at the JCC in the old building on Route 70. And it's where we have people sign Hanukkah cards for U.S. troops, and they get disseminated through the chaplaincy. The other thing we started about 4 or 5 years ago is also cards separate that will go to Israeli troops. And we do that either through the embassy or through Friends of the IDF or through the military attaché at the embassy. Okay? Now, we've always gotten very, very good feedback. Nelson, would you come up, please? Talk about the Hanukkah cards. The reason I asked Nelson to come up is because we've been doing this in partnership with the Jewish war vets, and Nelson is the National Outreach Chairman. Nelson, Chief of Staff. Would you speak for a moment about the Operation Maccabee and any impact you know of?
Sorry, I was outside. My flight to San Antonio was canceled, so I was trying to book another flight. That's why I was out there. Did he say anything bad about me before I came in? Yes. Well, that's normal. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Ever since 1990, 1991 with the Gulf War, this men's club has been sending Hanukkah cards and gift packages and other things to the troops overseas and some domestic troops. Okay, it's been a fantastic adventure. It's been really great. We've gotten some good responses from the troops overseas, and we've continued that sporadically, but I'd say over the last 15 years, we've done it 12 out of 15 years, sending cards out there. I don't know if Mike mentioned, we've also included the IDF we're sending cards to now. So what we're going to do at the next men's club meeting, we're going to set up a couple boxes at one of these tables for you to fill out Hanukkah cards to send to the troops. I don't know also if Mike mentioned, we're working with the Jewish Welfare Board as well as the Jewish War Veterans, working with the embassy from Israel. So it's a fantastic thing that we're doing. Because you know, if you've ever been overseas by yourself, even if you're with some other troops, It's great to receive cards from home, especially Hanukkah cards, and we're going to continue that. And I think I calculated last year we sent over 10,000 cards out over these last 15 years. Again, fantastic feeling. Thank you.
I just want to add one other thing, two other things, is luckily it hasn't cost us a nickel. What we've been able to do is people would contribute money and we would buy cards. The other thing that we were able to do was that through the Hebrew schools throughout this whole area, the kids will do Hanukkah cards, and we send them also. It's a little tough when they don't start until middle of September, and we have to have them usually, believe it or not, by the beginning of October because of the logistics. If they get sent through some ways, they pack boxes of cards and other things that they mail out, and they do this way ahead. So if anybody wants to participate or get cards from grandchildren or somebody else, feel free to do so. Next meeting is when we're going to be filling them out at our tables. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Let's see, Don's going to be running today fantasy football, an opportunity to have 12 to 15 weeks of wonderful time.
Yes, today we'll start it. I have the ceremonial matzah that will break to start our official. Unfortunately, our matzah man themed doll, the batteries kind of died on it, so I don't have that with me, but we do have the official matzah. Anybody that wants to stay that is not involved with the fantasy football is welcome to stay and just observe. We're more than happy to have you. And it should be a real fun day. There's probably more than 20 guys here that are involved with it. Thanks.
Okay, one last thing. I've been notified that the JFCS their pantries, essentially we're going to be doing sorting on October 1st. And I'll mention it again at the next meeting, but we'll be looking for volunteers to just help and sort the foods out. You know, there'll be kosher and the non-kosher, and they have it just down to a wonderful method. So it's just requires some of our members to be there to help out to do the sorting. So more about it next time. But if you can volunteer, please do. The more people we can get, the faster we can get it done, and it'll be much more efficient than just having just one or two.
Yes. At the other location?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it'll be at the other location, the one down on Springdale Road, 1721 Springdale Road. Okay, Dave? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, all right.
Normally, we have an investment club meeting following a regular meeting. Due to the fantasy football draft, we're not doing that today. We had a meeting this past Wednesday night at Rich Dutkin's plant. If any of the members are here, I have updated sheets showing where we are in the investment club. And if you didn't have an opportunity to make a contribution to the investment club on Wednesday's meeting, I'm here if you want to do that.
All right, I thought that the fantasy football was an investment.
Hey, Gordy?
Yes.
If you're the fact that we have a couple of guests, could they give an explanation about the investment club?
Oh, sure. Art, can you give a...
We have an investment club, Art.
Oh, I can't do it.
All right.
That's an investment. Good morning, everyone. We have an investment club that we've been running now for 21 years. We're doing okay. We meet every meeting after the general meeting, except today is an exception. In those months where we don't have a regular meeting, we try to meet somewhere else during the week. If you have any questions about the investment club, please see me. Thanks.
Thank you, Art.
Dave, will you present our speaker?
Good morning. I'd like to thank Rabbi Schneider for coming today, and I'm going to read a short bio. Rabbi Ilene Schneider is one of the first 6 women rabbis ordained in the United States, has decided what she wants to do when she grows up. She retired from her day job to devote full-time to writing. She is the author of the Rabbi Aviva Cohen Mysteries, Chanukah Guilt, which was nominated for the Deadly Ink David Award for Best Mystery, and named a My Shelf's Top 10 Read, a Midwest Book Review Reviewer's Choice book. Unleavened Dead, first place winner, the Public Safety Writers Association, and nominee for the Deadly Ink David Award. And Yom Killer, winner of the Deadly Ink David Award. She is also the author of Talk Dirty Yiddish, Beyond Drek, soon to be released in a revised edition as Talking Dirty in Yiddish. She has designed a website on Q&As about Hanukkah, why9candles.com, and edited recipes by the book Oak Tree Authors Cook. I welcome Rabbi Schneider.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you invited me to be here today, following in the illustrious steps of my husband, Rabbi Gary Gans, who was your speaker, I think last month, on Jewish genealogy. And I appreciate this opportunity. And it's nice to see people that I know, and including Barney Kaplan, who is actually featured in Yom Killer. So if you want to see Barney in a very different light, one of the things I caution is that my characters are fictitious. The only thing he has in common with the character is his name. And for that, I thank him for a donation to Congregation Beth Tikva to be named.
My question, Eileen, is who do you think will get the role, Richard Gere or Tom Hanks?
I don't know yet. I'm still angling for Bette Midler for myself, for Rabbi Aviva Cohen, so we'll see. But let me just get the next one published first, then I'll worry about the... I do have to admit, though, Barney, that my publisher recently told me that he is going to make sure he gets my books into the hands of his agent in Hollywood. So who knows? I think Oprah's my best bet, actually. So, it may seem strange that as a rabbi, I did not set out to be a Jewish writer. The reason is that I started writing well before I decided to become a rabbi. I'll give you some background. I've always been a writer, beginning with my parodies of nursery rhymes when I was about 8 years old. My goal at that point was to write for Mad Magazine, my dream job. Absolutely. This is the good days of Mad Magazine, not the way it is now with ads and glossy paper and color and all that kind of thing. At overnight camp, I hated sports. And I didn't have the manual dexterity or the fine motor skills to put together even a popsicle box that was straight. It was always lopsided. So I volunteered to run the camp newspaper. This was during free period. It was a Jewish camp, so I guess you could say it was my first foray into Jewish journalism. I was 13. My first nationally published work, a eulogy of JFK, was accepted by Ingenue magazine when I was 15. I even got a paycheck. Well, not paycheck, I got a check for my writing. I can't remember, it was $5 or 10. I think it was $5. 10 back then would have been a fortune for me. Didn't want to cash it. My mother, who worked in a bank, told me I had to or I would mess up the magazine's bookkeeping. So my father made a photocopy of it, that gray slimy paper used to have. I think I still have it in a drawer somewhere. I really should check and see if it's around anymore. That was actually also the last time I got paid for writing for many years. In high school, I was a contributing editor to our literary magazine, The Jabberwocky. Went to Girls Latin School in Boston, and the founders of the journal back in the late 1800s got permission from Lewis Carroll to use the Jabberwock as our mascot, and Jabberwocky is the name of the magazine. And I also was an editor of the senior yearbook, and I don't think my best friend has ever forgiven me for the caption I put under her photo. I don't remember what it was, but she does. In college, I was a communication major, mostly concentrating on journalism. I was an editor of my college paper and a founding editor of an alternative Jewish student paper in Boston, another venture into Jewish journalism. My goal at that time was to be the first woman editor of the New York Times. I got a little sidetracked. But I still continue to write, taking over the editorship of a Jewish student paper in Philadelphia while I was in rabbinical school. But then after that, my writing was mostly academic, or curriculum design, or reports, or grant proposals, which many people do consider to be a form of fiction. Several years ago, I found myself temporarily underemployed, and in case you're wondering, yes, that is a euphemism for having been downsized out of a job. The guy who demoted me, by the way, became the corpse in my second book. Gotta be careful with me. I have a t-shirt that says, "Be careful, you'll wind up in my novel." One way I kept busy while looking for a new position, which is not easy when you're in your early 50s and have a resume that skews very heavily towards educational administration, was through volunteer work. I spent so much time at the Rancocas Nature Center in West Hampton that they offered me a small salary, which I, of course, accepted. But I had also been a columnist for a while with the Burlington County Times twice a month. And when that gig ended, I continued on an occasional basis with the Philadelphia Inquirer. And my third way to spend time while job searching was to write a novel. I've been a voracious reader since first grade. It would have been earlier if my mother hadn't been afraid the teachers would be angry with her for teaching me before they did. In those days, teachers commanded a lot more respect than they do these days. And I had wondered for quite some time how certain books had gotten published, let alone been on the bestseller list. Now, I don't really want to mention names, but I will. I do owe a debt of gratitude to Dan Brown for getting me to think I have got to stop criticizing other books unless I try to write one. I am not a big fan of his. I don't particularly like those kind of unrealistic thrillers where somebody is bound up in chained in the engine room of an icebreaker in the Arctic and the boat to explode, and then in the next scene they're in Paris and there's no indication of how they got there. How do they bathe? Do they have credit cards? How do they get from country to country without a passport? It's not my favorite genre. A lot of people do like them. That's why they're bestsellers, and mine are not. and cozy mysteries are not bestsellers. I also took to heart the two pieces of advice from Hillel. If not now, when? And say not, when I have time, I will study, because you may never have the time. Well, I did have the time, and it was now. It took a while to write Chanukah Guilt. It took longer before I finally gave up on looking for an agent and instead concentrated on looking for a publisher who did not require an agent and was willing to take a chance on an unpublished author. Eventually I did. But I still hadn't given up my day job. After all, it had taken me quite some time to find that job, and I wasn't about to give it up for what might turn out to be a daydream. Ironically, within 2 weeks of beginning this new job as a spiritual support counselor and coordinator of Jewish hospice for Samaritan healthcare and hospice, I received an offer from a small independent publisher. Okay, now the tachlis. What makes Jewish book Jewish? It's the topic of today's talk. How has Judaism influenced my writing? Am I a Jewish writer? Are my books Jewish books? And what is it that determines a Jewish book anyway? I'm a rabbi. My protagonist is a rabbi. My three mysteries, as you heard earlier, are Chanukah Guilt, Unleavened Dead, and Yom Killer. The next one will be Purim plots, as in P-L-O-T-Z. Do you see a theme developing here? One of my nonfiction books is titled, as you heard before, Talk Dirty Yiddish Beyond Drek, soon to be republished in a new edition called Talking Dirty in Yiddish. It will be out, it will be at my publishers as soon as I finish writing the glossary, and which is making me go cross-eyed. Any eye doctors around here who could help out with that problem? Blurry eyes when I spend here? Yeah, I'll be calling you, actually. I need a checkup. So it's a problem of getting this glossary together. And I keep adding new things. My husband today sent me something from a travel blog about going to Morocco, which we're doing in October, Jewish tour of Morocco from United Synagogue in Ramah. And she said to avoid the women, the street vendors who are going to keep hucking you about applying henna to your hands. Well, hucking is a good Yiddish word, and the name of the author was not a Jewish name, so it goes on my list of words that I hear or read in Yiddish by non-Jews. And British TV is great for that. Now, my first paid writing since I was 15 was when I was living in Jerusalem for a year and got a job as the editorial assistant, aka ghostwriter, for Rabbi Israel Goldstein. The book Jewish Justice and Conciliation, History of the Jewish Conciliation Board of America, 1930 to 1968, and a review of Jewish juridical autonomy isn't quite as tedious as it sounds. In fact, it's fairly interesting, but it didn't find a particularly wide audience. I did, however, receive an hourly salary for my research and writing, far in excess of any royalties the book would have earned. Recipes by the Book, Oak Tree Authors Cook, is a compilation of recipes. The only kosher ones are mine, appearing in books published by my second publisher. I conceived the idea and edited the book thinking it wouldn't take more than a few weeks, far from my first or last misjudgment. When I was trying to find an agent for Chanukah Guilt, an interested agent who's Jewish told me I had to change the title, that no one outside of the two coasts would understand the pun of guilt and gelt. A friend of mine, an aspiring, at that time still aspiring, now published novelist, was advised by another agent to make her novels, quote, less Jewish, and to take out the Yiddish words, make the characters more, for lack of a better word, parav. I think those two agents underestimated the extent of cultural literacy in the U.S. I have yet to meet anyone who has not understood the title of Chanukah Guilt. In fact, it's more likely to be Jews who will ask me if it was a typo. I also doubt that Michael Chabon was ever asked to change the title or tone down the characters in the Yiddish Policemen's Union. So even though I'm not a linguist or a Yiddishist, nor did I grow up in a Yiddish-speaking home, I was actually solicited to write Talk Dirty Yiddish. Not only on the basis of my ability to do research and use the internet, but because the acquisition editor, a non-Jew, had been impressed by Chanukah Guilt. I sold Unleavened Dead, precisely because the publisher realized the Jewish community was a niche market that she did not cover, and that a rabbi was just the writer to open it for her. Yom Killer was published on the strength of the crossover sales to the general reading public and the awards and other recognition from non-Jewish conferences consisting of both writers and fans of my other books. As an example of the crossover appeal, when Unleavened Dead was published, a woman who serves with me on the board and the board of trustees of the Evesham Friends of the Library bought the book. She's a big fan of Chanukah Guilt, and she had been waiting patiently for book number 2, Unleavened Dead. Her husband of many years had died just a few months before. She was still mourning the loss. When she came to my book launch party a few weeks after she had bought the book, I asked her if she had read it yet and enjoyed it. She said, "Enjoyed it? I got home and began reading it in bed. I went to sleep with a smile on my face for the next 3 nights." This was somebody who's not Jewish. And that kind of comment is not just satisfying, but to me is a symbol of success beyond any kind of royalty payments or ranking on Amazon. It was the best praise I could have received. So, are my books Jewish books? What makes a Jewish book? Is any book by a Jewish writer, no matter the level of the author's commitment or observance, automatically a Jewish book? Faye Kellerman's mysteries have Jewish protagonists, but those written by her husband and son do not. Are her books Jewish, but theirs aren't? Is a book with a Jewish theme, or protagonist, or setting automatically a Jewish book, even if the author is not a member of the tribe? Is Thomas Mann's Joseph and His Brothers a Jewish book because it is essentially a midrash on Bereshit? So I began to think about the themes of my own books. They are all cozy mysteries, the traditional Agatha Christie type in which any violence or sex is off the page. I do veer from the full definition of a cozy, however, in that my characters, including the protagonist, Rabbi Aviva Cohen, do use profanities. But, as I explained to my mother when she complained, that's how aging baby boomers talk. When we think about Jewish books, we think about literary fiction. Bernard Malamud, Chaim Potok, Philip Roth, Elie Wiesel, Primo Levi. We think of ponderous, serious books with philosophic themes that make us stop and reflect. We do not think of a humorous, cozy mystery featuring a woman rabbi with a sideline as an amateur sleuth in a small fictional town on the edge of the South Jersey Pine Barrens. But while thinking about this talk, I wondered, could the plots of my books still be written in the same way if Aviva were Father Sean Donahue, or a college professor, or a supermarket cashier? If the setting were a Puritan town in Vermont or in the Midwest, instead of a small town in a college community in the Mid-Atlantic? It might be difficult. After all, people don't confide in a supermarket cashier the way they do in a rabbi. But yes, with modifications, the basic plots could be the same, even if there were no Jews among the characters. So, that being said, what makes my books Jewish? It is the ambiance, the gestalt, the settings, the activities the characters engage in, the words they use, the cadence of their dialogues, their tom. There's some kind of Jewish aesthetic that marks the books as Jewish, even if it is just the titles, the names, the synagogue, the Jewish rituals described. While it could be possible to use the same suspicious deaths at the heart of the books, the same motives, the same solutions, the books would not be the same without the details that make them uniquely Jewish. I want to open it now for discussion, for questions. Yes?
Well, you said, what makes it a Jewish book? I'm going back to 1933 when Hitler gained power. Anything that was written or done by a Jew was a Jewish book.
Was a Jewish book. Yes, that's very true.
So,
That's very true.
Is it the time, the culture, the people who, like the people you, many that were not Jewish, and they enjoyed the book, they looked forward to new books. So what does that tell you about the people who enjoy these kind of books? What does it say about them? That they're open-minded, that they appreciate other people's culture? I mean, when they read those books, did you ever inquire about them? Well, what is it about it that, you found interesting, or that you found, did you ever talk to them and ask them questions about what it is that grabbed their attention and made them enjoy it?
Good question. People have told me, non-Jews who have read my books and really like them, have said that they enjoy learning more about Judaism, things they did not know. And the big challenge I have is writing the books in such a way that I don't lecture. Because there's nothing worse than reading even, a cozy mystery, which tends to be more meandering than a thriller. There's a lot of backstory, a lot of digressions. My protagonist does go out to eat. She does worry about getting home to feed her cat. She does worry about her job evaluation from the synagogue. And even though, because that's what people expect from a cozy, you don't want to do what's called an info dump in the middle of anything. So you have to kind of weave the information in. And people have told me, who aren't Jewish, have said that they've enjoyed the books in part because they learn about another culture. I know I really enjoy reading books that take place in societies with which I am not familiar. A lot of mysteries that take place in other countries. And I'm not talking just about England, but the whole popularity right now of mysteries set in Scandinavia. I just read some that were taking place in the Shetland Islands. Because these are, which is England, but it's just the idea of learning about people and cultures and locations with which I'm not familiar. And I suspect it's the same kind of thing. Yes?
From your experience, do Jewish authors resent being typecast as Jewish authors? For instance, you mentioned Philip Roth. I would think Philip Roth would resent being classified only as Jewish. So much more.
I don't think that they resent being classified as Jewish authors, or they wouldn't write the way they do. They wouldn't write about Jewish themes. I think they probably do resent it if they are considered to be only Jewish authors, not accessible for non-Jews to read and enjoy. The ones I mentioned are people who are recognized as literary authors. Mysteries, whether they be thrillers or be cozies, are considered genre fiction, same as science fiction. There's a certain group of people who will read them regardless of the settings. But literary fiction, too, has a certain cachet to it that people will read. If somebody is considered, let's say Naomi Reagan. I am not she does have a fairly good following among readers of romance novels and such, and yet I think of her as being primarily a Jewish writer, which may just be my own bias about her. So I think it really depends on the writer. There is, and let's face it, we are known as the people of the book. Of course, the book being referred to as the Torah, and the Talmud, but the fact is that Jews read. They buy books. And so there is a market probably far beyond our numbers for books with Jewish themes. But I know that I do not want to be considered just a niche within a niche of writing only for Jews. And that's why I'm so thrilled whenever I get a review or a reward, an award, or some other recognition from the general community. To become a crossover like that is very important, or you just don't, no matter how large and affluent and literate the Jewish community is, it cannot sustain the number of writers that are out there. So I think it really depends on the person. I don't think anybody wants to be buttonholed into one category. They want themselves to be seen as a Jewish writer who appeals to everyone. Yes?
This is something like your answer just now, but who was the majority of readers of these books? Is it people our age or millennials?
People our age. I do have some millennial fans.
That are Jewish?
No, that are not Jewish. But on the other hand, they're my son's friends, so I'm not sure if it counts. I also have quite a few senior citizens, but that's because my mother, Rabbi Shalom, and my father are great PR people for me. They really shill my books. So I have, just about everybody in their independent living complex, I think, has read my stuff. And every time I visit, they say, when's the next one coming out? So I have both. But the majority of readers in general for mysteries and for cozy mysteries tend to be women from, let's say, 45 to 50 up. You don't find as many younger ones. You don't find as many millennials in general reading. Game of Thrones may be an exception. When the Lord of the Rings movies came out, then Tolkien got a sudden burst of fame again. Generally speaking, I can go for my own sons. My older son, who's 29, has read every single Game of Thrones book, and unfortunately got me addicted to both the books and the TV show. Season finale tonight. I don't think he's read another novel outside of what he's had to read for his undergraduate and then graduate degree. And those were all textbooks. I doubt if he's read anything or any kind of novel. My younger one happens to love Agatha Christie. So he's been raiding my bookshelves for Agatha Christie, also some of the traditional science fiction like Asimov. I'm not sure if either boy has read my books. So these are ones that tend not just to skew younger so much as older.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, and reflecting on your talk, I realized that there are two types of mystery books. One where there's a professional crime fighter,
Right.
police detective, etc. And then the other Kellerman, who's a psychologist. Did anybody influence you that you chose to have a rabbi who solves crimes instead of a professional?
I could be very crass and say it was a marketing decision. Rabbi Aviva Cohen is still the only woman rabbi amateur sleuth protagonist. There are some women rabbis in other mysteries, but they are not. They might be like a girlfriend of a police officer or a peripheral character, but she is the only one who is the main protagonist and is a woman rabbi. So in a way it was a little bit of a, let's get this sort of niche covered by me. Excuse me.
You want some water?
So, yes, I would. Thank you. That would be nice. Thank you. I'm sorry, I get very dry. I don't want to put it too close to my laptop. That's all I need to do is fry it. So, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. You were asking about...
The only Jewish woman.
I mentioned she was the only Jewish rabbi, not Jewish rabbi, that's a stupid phrase, there's no non-Jewish rabbis, the only woman rabbi protagonist. Now, you were saying with...
Well, I said there were two types of crimes.
Two types of crimes. Okay, it's actually more. You've got the suspense. That's one where, where you know who did it, and it's, who's going to get there first, and all the thriller type. You've got the police procedurals, which is what you were talking about with the professional. Then you have the amateur sleuth. And so there are at least 3, and you can then get into noir, you can get into all kinds of other small areas. I had decided to do this because I am not a police officer. I don't have a background in that. I did take the Citizens Police course in Evesham, the first class, and it was after Chanukah Guilt came out, and I found that, okay, it wasn't terribly off the beaten track. I could explain any of the things I did, not having the state police step in there. They probably should have in a small town. I was able, like in a later book actually, to explain that, having to do with a former president of the university having gotten a speeding ticket from a rookie state police officer who was not aware of the gentleman's agreement that the president of the university had with the governor, and the president of the university forbade the state police from ever stepping foot on the campus again. So the local police had to do any of the crimes that showed up there. It's a rather glib way for me to do it. But they say, write what you know. I don't know about police work. I write in the first person. That way, I don't need to know any more than Aviva does. She can say, that he pulled a gun on me. She doesn't have to go through a whole description of what kind of gun, what kind of caliber, anything else. She doesn't know. She knows as much about guns as I do, which is nothing. So some of it was self-preservation, to keep myself from having to do even more research than I do on my books. But again, they say, write what you know. So, woman rabbi, South Jersey, that's as far as it goes. Well, physically we look alike, but that's about it for the
other part of my
things that
question
come
was, did any writer prior to you
influence me? Any writer. I read a lot of cozy mysteries, and I decided to write what I would like to read. I would say it was more the ones that influenced me not to write like them would be more accurate. I know which ones I enjoy, and basically, I love Game of Thrones. I love the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, that trilogy, and they are every genre I dislike, especially Game of Thrones. And Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, he breaks every rule. He does info dumps. He has too much backstory all at once. Nothing in there follows any rules of writing. The Game of Thrones, I hate magic, I hate dragons, I hate zombies, I hate medieval warfare, graphic sex and bloody violence. It's got all of that. Why do I love them so much? The writers are good storytellers, and that's what it amounts to. So that's the two pieces of what you asked. Yes, then back there
About, I don't know, 20 years ago, I read a rabbinical, Kellerman, I think, a rabbi series, which was a mystery, like rabbi slept in on Friday.
Oh, yes, that's right. It's not right. It's Kemmelman, not Kimmelman.
Okay.
Kemmelman, yes.
Did that have any influence on you?
Yeah, to not write like him. Okay, his Rabbi Small in those books is very holier than thou, pious, kind of. I've gotten criticisms about that people don't like Rabbi Aviva Cohen because she's not Jewish enough. She doesn't use Talmudic logic. She's snarky. She's nosy. She's too sarcastic. Well, snarky is sarcastic. I felt like writing to the people that say that and say, thank you. You got it. It's exactly what I planned. I wanted her to be the anti-David Small. So, as I said earlier, I think I was more influenced to do the opposite of some of the things I'd read. Yeah, I'd read all of those, and I loved them when I was younger. A lot younger, actually. Yes?
How long does it take for you to write a book? I mean, is it something you just sit down and do, or you drag it out?
It takes me too long. I really should be able to just sit down and do it. And once I get my voice to the book, once I get into the rhythm, I can do that. It took me 10 years to write my doctoral dissertation. I knew it took me only 2 years to do all my coursework, to do my comps, to get the proposal accepted, and then it took me 10 years. It wasn't until Temple University said, you better do it or else, that it took me 6 months to finish the whole thing. Because if I have a deadline, I'm fine. If it's open-ended, it's like, there's other stuff to do. new movie came out, I'll go to the Ritz, it's $5 this afternoon, that kind of thing. It takes me much too long, but it does get done. Yes?
By any chance did you catch, there's a local woman, actually from Mainline, named was Sarah Siegel, through murder at the mikveh about 5 years ago?
Yeah, I don't remember if I read it or not. I am familiar with it, and I can't, I'd have to look at my Kindle and see if I read it. I don't
Her dad
remember.
gave her free advertising because he owns all half the...
I know the one you mean, yes. Yeah.
At any rate, it involved, of course, a murder at the mikveh, but the interesting part is that not only did it take place at real places, the main line, but also involved the church. And your conversation today, as soon as when I was getting out the email for you to be here a couple of weeks ago, the first thing that hit me was what makes a Jewish book Jewish. And this involved at least as much of the church as it did at a Jewish location where they had a mikveh.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
And I began thinking about it. So it was
Well, I've, first of all, the first of Faye Kellerman's books actually takes place in a mikveh also. I do know the books that you're referring to. I have a friend, writer friend, who is an Episcopal, I guess she herself is an Episcopal minister, but her protagonist is. And we have talked a few times about doing something, having the two of them. And I actually did a little, very short thing for her blog one time about how my protagonist and her protagonist met. And it was kind of a fun exercise. Sometimes writers will do these kinds of short little pieces as an exercise. Also a great way to waste time and feel like you're really writing. You're not really wasting time. So that was a fun thing to do. And we talked about it because her protagonist, even though she's studying in England at the Episcopal Seminary, Anglican Seminary there, comes from Philadelphia. So we were talking, okay, we've got to do something. She's here visiting family. She knows Aviva from wherever, and they get together. But we never quite got it together to do that. But yes, there can be, crossover stuff because these days rabbis never mind rabbis, Jews don't live in a shtetl. Maybe Lakewood, but generally speaking, I mean, we interact with our general communities. Otherwise it'd be, JCRC. And so there's a lot that we do with non-Jews. And so yes, it does happen quite a bit. And by the way, my latest one of the things I did was get more involved with, it's sort of a side thing, but it's really crucial to unraveling what's happening with the whole McCarthy era. And the, what we now it's not the old left, it's the old left, I guess now. My generation's now the old left.
How did a woman who wrote the series about Harry Potter is probably one of the most
incredible stories. Yeah.
I mean, where did she come up with those kinds of ideas that can appeal to such a broad category of kids, adults, everybody?
If I had the answer to that, I would be luxuriating on a beach somewhere. No, it's incredible how she did it. And hers was, Scholastic was her publisher. It was Scholastic. I mean, and I feel good because I do one of the things that she did, which was writing in coffee shops. Now, she did it because she couldn't afford anything else. I do it because if I try to write at home, I do the laundry, I fill the bird feeders, I say, oh, those weeds have got to get out of there. I find other things to do. And so I have to get out of the house. And I alternate between Starbucks, 2 or 3 different ones, and Dunkin' Donuts, 2 or 3 different ones, because I need a certain amount of ambient noise that has nothing to do with me so I can ignore it and focus in on my work. And that's in between checking Facebook, checking emails, looking to see if my favorite British soap opera has been uploaded yet onto BritBox. I mean, there's, so many other things that I do. But I don't know how she came up with it. She has an incredible, incredible imagination. And as Stieg Larsson and George R.R. Martin tells a great storyteller.
Yeah.
And that's really at the heart of it. They are good storytellers. Yes, Barney?
Just interesting, you mentioned Scholastic Magazine.
Yeah.
I have more feeling about my weekly reader.
Oh, yes, I recall.
But I'm wondering if the question of what makes a Jewish book is evolving. I think the traditional answer would be a book written in Hebrew or Yiddish. But when you think of the great Jewish writers of the 20th century, Saul Bellow wrote about life in Chicago, and Philip Roth.
That's right.
Life,
I forgot to put Bellow on my list.
and they didn't really deal with religious themes, but they talked about
Yiddishkeit.
the religious life. They
Yeah.
grew up in a Jewish environment and had a Jewish ethos. So while they're not dealing with specifically Jewish subjects, they're certainly a very strong reflection of their Jewish upbringing.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I think there's an evolution.
Sure.
Kind
Of course, you get the same thing when you read other writers, too. James Joyce is going to write, well, he also wrote about Jewish characters, actually, Molly Bloom. But, he can't be anything except an Irish writer. So there are certain things. I just forgot the name of them. The totally blanked on the name now. Mystery writer who writes about Native American tribes, Inspector Chi, in the Four Corners. I'm sorry. Hillerman, thank you. Yes. Now, he died, and his daughter has taken over the writing of the books that continue the series. Now, I love that series. He himself is not Native American, but he was able to immerse himself enough in that community and that culture to write about it in such a way that it comes alive and is authentic. I had actually met his daughter, who is continuing the series. I met her at a conference, and I said to her, I have to tell you, I was really worried when I picked up your first book, continuing the stories, your father's stories, because I said, what if she makes a mess of it? And I said, I'm so glad you didn't. It was wonderful. You really caught his voice. And she thanked me and said she had been really worried about that too, disappointing his fans. But those kinds of things. Dana Stabenow lives in Alaska, but she is not a native Alaskan. And yet she writes about that society in a very compelling way. So the fact that Jewish writers write about Jewish communities without being overly religious, let's say. It's maybe Chaim Potok is an exception to some, but he does the conflicts between secular and religious. But yeah, it is evolving. Everything, it always evolves. Styles evolve. If you notice, I didn't put Shalom Aleichem on this list. I didn't put the Yiddish writers on here. Because they are obviously Jewish writers. And yes, Fiddler on the Roof appeals to everybody because it has to do with generational clashes. It has to do with finding your place in the world. It has to do with so many things that are universal themes. But how many people have read, how many Jews have read Shalom Aleichem, even in translation, to find out that Tevye and his daughters, or Tevye, I guess it's called Tevye and his daughters, very different from Fiddler on the Roof, much darker, really dark. People, even Jews don't know this. So yeah, it does evolve and change, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
Rabbi Schneider, we always give a
thank you.
certificate of appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And a reminder, anybody who wants to buy a book, just
Yes, my books are over here.
we need a picture of him. We have one more duty.
Before we do this, I just want to let you know, we collected $163 for the food bank. We were shooting for $250, so if anybody else wants to chip in, maybe we can reach it today. Look at that. Thank you. Anyway, JFCS is the check, Jewish Family and Children's Services. Today the 50/50 is $51.
Right.
And you can read the last
You're telling me to read, you're telling me,
last three
you're telling me to read something without my reading glasses.
last three digits
Talk to my eye doctor about that.
will work.
Last three digits are 804.
That's not my number.
804.
Yep.